Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Kneon. I'm not here with Geeky Sparkles in this video. We're going to talk about how Dungeons and Dragons is still racist or something. This ridiculous article from The Atlantic, and it was done this year. It was done like a month ago. And we've got one of the OG TSR creators. We've got Robert J. Kuntz calling out this author. This whole thing is basically a meltdown about Elon Musk potentially buying Hasbro, which he talked about. I don't think he's serious. I don't think he's actually going to buy it. And if he did buy Hasbro, he would be buying it because he wanted the Optimus trademark. I can almost guarantee you that's his real motivation. But we're going to talk about this article and just, God, the nonsense, the narrative that D&D is like the most racist thing ever. I mean, this has been going on for years. If you go out and just look for racist white Dungeons and Dragons, and you go out and look for this, and you're going to see like a cajillion articles, especially from 2016 through 2020. But yeah, it's just, why does the game suck now? Well, the game sucks because we have a lot of people come into the hobby that were not part of the hobby during the early days. And I do understand. I understand that, you know, hobbies change, demographics change. I get that. D&D, in my opinion, tabletop gaming has been popularized in the last 10 to 12 years by Hollywood types and Tumblr that have latched onto it because for them it's an OC generation tool, you know, and they can LARP as their OCs. And that whole culture has kind of permeated Dungeons and Dragons at the expense of, I believe, pushing out the old school fans, people that have been with this hobby for a very long time, people that have been playing since the 70s. And it's gotten so bad that even the official Dungeons and Dragons material coming from Wizards of the Coast, like they're actually pushing out, they're actually making some really shitty comments about the original creators, talking about how they were, you know, just a bunch of white men from the flyover states, middle-aged white men. How very dare they? So we're going to take a look at this. This is just pure nonsense. This happens all the time. I mean, this happens every couple of months. There's a new Tolkien was racist, D&D is racist, and it's basically racist because we're not playing it the way I think we should play it. And you've always been free to make this game whatever you want it to be. If you want, you know, a tribe of trans pansexual elves, it's your table, your rules, right? But you shouldn't expect Hasbro, WotC, TSR, whoever to create that for you officially. And you shouldn't attack gamers who are kind of like, you know, these question marks are like, why are you, what are you doing? Because not every table is for every group of players, right? I mean, that is true. But they effectively want to, from where I'm sitting, they want to police the gamers. They want to make sure all the gamers are the right kinds of people. They want to make sure they all play the game the right way, which is their way. And that nobody is doing anything offensive, even if they do it in the privacy of their own basements. You know, God forbid. It's like, don't roll a fascism, okay? So let's talk about this. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Yeah, Robert J. Kuntz was talking about it the other day, and you really should go out and watch the interview we did with him on the podcast. It was almost 3 hours talking to him, and we got some got to glean some insight into what it was like at the early days of TSR, what it was like being there when Dungeons and Dragons was created. And they go after him. This is what blows my mind. They go after the people that were actually there, that actually created these games. They go after Gary Gygax in death because they don't like his politics, and they try to rewrite history. They want Gary Gygax. Now, if Gary Gygax was a Colonel Sanders type, like a cartoon mascot for D&D, they'd be all about it. Like, oh, he's cuddly old Uncle Gary, and he's, you know, rolling that D20, you know, there you go. Not 20 there, Uncle Gary. Yeah, if he were like some cuddly old codger, you know, non-offensive, whatever, they would embrace him. But he was on the internet. He had opinions. He was very vocal about his opinions, and they didn't like it. Actually, I'm starting to realize this is what's so weird about this, and this is not to get political. I'm trying not to make it political, but the more you look into it, a lot of the franchises, the fantasy franchises, the video game franchises, the things that have withstood the test of time, I'm seeing more and more people that were more conservative or libertarian leaning that created a lot of these things, because it does take, I believe, a certain ethos to create something out of nothing, right? And not expect it to be handed to you or get a hand-me-down or get your equity or whatever the proper terminology is. These were guys mostly, and there were women too, but it was a lot of guys who did it themselves. It was very DIY. It was very bootstrapped. And, we had people come in after they created this thing, and then they want to take it over, and they want that warm seat, right? They want to come into an established franchise that only exists because of those toxic white men that you didn't like. Well, those toxic white men did it themselves, and they created something out of nothing. And a lot of these people could never create anything, or they expect to be given a megaphone when they haven't paid their dues, because they are who they are. And if you don't give it to them, then you're a racist or a bigot or a misogynist or whatever. There is a lot of entitlement, I think, in the gaming industries, both tabletop and video games. But let's take a look at what Robert Kuntz said, and then we'll go out and read some of this ridiculous article. I was going to do this as a short, and I started going through the article. I'm like, God, this is such a pile of poop. It really is like a very academic paper. It's people stop crying about the state of Dungeons and Dragons. You could always play it however the hell you want to play it. I don't care. I don't care if you've got a village full of, like I said, trans, gay, furry kins, whatever. You want, do whatever you want to do, but don't expect everybody else to want to play at that table too. It's for a very niche audience, right? Robert J. Kuntz, who was there. Why Elon Musk needs Dungeons and Dragons to be racist. So all the buzzwords. Elon, I don't think, is even that interested in buying D&D at this point. I don't think he talked about it, but again, if he buys Hasbro, that's a whole nother can of worms, and I think he'd be more interested in the Optimus trademark, but that's just me. So the game is more popular than ever, reaching far beyond its original audience of Midwestern misfits and bookish nerds, which inspired the world's richest man to lash out because his favorite role-playing game wasn't as racist and sexist as it used to be. Oh, fuck right off. That is such a bad take. This is such a bad take. So Elon Musk needs Dungeons and Dragons to be racist, according to The Atlantic. And this person basically goes through and says that they were a misfit and that they, started playing D&D because they were a misfit. Most of us did, including myself. But last November on X, the billionaire tycoon Elon Musk told the toy company Hasbro to burn in hell. Hasbro owns Wizards of the Coast, which produces the games Dungeons and Dragons. Neither Hasbro nor Wizards of the Coast invented Dungeons and Dragons. Let's be very, very clear. They acquired it, but they did not invent it. They came from Gygax and Arneson. It came from TSR. Wizards had just released a book on the making of the game that was critical of some of its creators' old material. Nobody, and I mean nobody, gets to trash the geniuses who created Dungeons & Dragons, Musk wrote. The book acknowledged that some earlier iterations of the game relied on racist and sexist stereotypes and included a virtual catalog of insensitive and derogatory language, after a designer at Wizards said the company's priority now was responding to progressives and underrepresented groups who justly took offense at those stereotypes, and not to the ire of the grognards, a reference to early fans such as Musk. Musk asked how much is Hasbro, suggesting that he might buy the company to impose his vision on it, as he'd done with Twitter. There's a lot to unpack here. We've covered this, and it was absolute bullshit. It was the 50th anniversary retrospective of Dungeons and Dragons. And even if they felt that way at the company, you do not use that platform, that opportunity, that anniversary to take a steaming shit on the people who created the game and who effectively handed you a job, because you didn't make it. Hasbro didn't make it. Wizards didn't make it. Gygax, Arneson, all the other contributors, Robert J. Kuntz, they made it. You're parasites. You came in later. You came in later after it was already established. Show a little fucking respect. I mean, seriously, show a little fucking respect. Just a kernel of respect. That whole thing did not need to be in this book. You could have, worded it another way, but they basically threw the creators of the game under the bus, and it was disgusting. It was a disgusting thing to do. You did not have to do it that way. Just stick to the facts. Here's how the game was created. Here's where it was created. Let people draw their own conclusions. You can even say, hey, the game's evolved over the last couple of years. Ha ha ha. Some of the stuff that flew in 1975 wouldn't fly today. That's fine. But they went out of their way to disparage the creators and the demographic. And this article goes out of its way to disparage old school fans. And this is an ongoing issue. I mean, this has been an ongoing issue for a long time. Like I said, at least 10 or 12 years. It does feel like there are two different D&D fandoms that we have. You know, the Grognars, we have the old school fans, and then we have the new WotC fans, the Critical Role fans, the people that came in later. And again, it's fine if everybody can get along, but I think these two demographics are so vastly different in both their play style and their ideology and what they think Dungeons and Dragons is. Old school fans think Dungeons and Dragons is a medieval battle simulator, basically, right? It's a role-playing game, but it was still a game with rules. New fans, again, seem to think it's a LARPing exercise, an OC simulator, and it's more about the acting because of, again, Critical Role, et cetera, Tumblr, all that stuff bleeding into it. Two very, very different games and two very, very different fandoms. And I almost wish that, 5e and that whole fandom, that they would just call it something else. Baristas and blowjobs. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it. It's a different game, right? And it really is. And so we've got these two very, very different groups clashing over the IP. But I'll tell you the truth. Most of the old school fans have already moved on to other things, myself included, because D&D is not what it used to be. They do acknowledge, though, see, it's very powerful. It's a very powerful platform. D&D was the original role-playing game, a structure that has influenced every kind of genre of fiction that followed. The game is more popular than ever, reaching far beyond its original audience of Midwestern misfits and bookish nerds. And for some fans, that's a problem. So they go on to talk about their... they go on to talk about their own problems. And oh God. And it all goes back to Tolkien because look, early D&D was basically an unofficial, in a lot of ways, not completely, but in a lot of ways, it was like an unofficial tabletop game of Tolkien. It was very, very similar to Tolkien's world, right? So they have a problem with Tolkien and they have a problem with things in Tolkien's universe, Middle Earth. They have a problem with Dungeons and Dragons because you can see the connective tissue there, right? D&D wouldn't exist without Tolkien's The Hobbit, fantasy's seminal 20th century text published in 1937. When Tolkien's German publisher, to comply with Nazi racial laws, tried to determine whether the author was Jewish, Tolkien was outraged. A draft of his response reads, "If I am to understand that you're inquiring whether I am of Jewish origin, I can only reply that I regret I appear to have no ancestors of that gifted people." He expressed his disgust to his publisher. "I have many Jewish friends who should regret giving any color to the notion that I subscribe to the holy, pernicious, and unscientific race doctrine." Unfortunately. Okay, so that's a very good thing to say, right? They're questioning, do you have Jewish friends? Well, yeah, I have Jewish friends, and I can't believe you would ask me that and ask me if I was Jewish and whatever. Oh, no, we can't just leave that alone because there's this whole damn effort by academia to destroy Tolkien. Unfortunately, a pernicious and unscientific race doctrine permeated the era in which The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings series that followed it were written, an era in which many Westerners believed that races shared particular natures, characteristics, and capabilities, that genetic determinism seeped into the books. Although uncountable readers were inspired by the tales of its diminutive heroes defying stereotypes to save the world, some drew other conclusions. The books and the ideas embedded in them would go on to have a magnetic appeal to the political forces Tolkien had rejected. So they're talking about right-wing billionaires naming companies after Tolkien stuff. Palantir. Peter Thiel's company. And of course, I was just talking about this the other day, Anduril. Palmer Luckey's arms company does like AI drones, but he also makes video game consoles. He invented the Oculus. But they just zero in on this, like, oh, Tolkien must be super racist. So because of that connection to that influence by Tolkien, now by extension, Dungeons and Dragons is problematic and racist too. This is an argument from 2016. I'm not going to go into like this. Look, we're spending paragraph after paragraph talking about how it connects to Donald Trump, and they're talking about Mordor, and they're oh my God. So let's go through it. Okay, so we got like 9 paragraphs talking about how problematic Tolkien is. Well, Dungeons and Dragons came from the early 1970s, a few years after insurance underwriter and cobbler Gary Gygax, because he wasn't educated. He was just a doofus from the Midwest, you know. A student named Dave Arneson met at a Midwestern tabletop gaming convention. At the time, war games using miniatures to enact fictional or famous battles were popular. And there's a whole story behind it. This is an oversimplification. So the game involves dice rolls and numbers indicating character traits, rules, and a referee. But the best way I can explain it is a game of pretend. I was a freak from the jump. I didn't have a chance. Black and Jewish with a father in the State Department. I spent my early life bouncing around Brazil and Italy. So I'm very well educated. I need you to know this. I use very large words. I'm very well educated, unlike those bookish nerds, those misfits from the Midwest, the cobbler. How dare I think there is actually, I'm going to be honest here with a lot of these journalists, these academics that try to tear down things that great men and women have made. And they go after their politics and they go after their education. I think there is jealousy. I think that they believe because I'm more traveled, I'm more educated, you know, you must have just gotten lucky because of your skin color to be able to do these things. You know, Walt Disney must have just gotten lucky because he was a white man or something. You know what I'm saying? Like there is that mindset, and that is a very dangerous mindset to have, right? Because then, yeah, and that's the thing, and that's where this whole idea of equity comes from, where other people have unfair advantages. And look, I'm not blind or dumb enough to say there isn't racism in this country, and historically it hasn't been a whole lot worse. Although, you know, the way things are going now, I don't know. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. But you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I agree. But I don't believe taking from somebody else to give to, you know, redistributing, which is basically what we're talking about, right? Redistribution of privilege. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about, instead of redistributing wealth, which, you know, some people are all for that too. See also taxes, but they want to redistribute privilege too. And they want to take points away from people. And it's very much like Harrison Bergeron, right? The only way that we can compete is to basically saddle this guy with a whole bunch of extra baggage. So we feel better. We can compete now because this guy is too talented, too smart, too whatever. But they oversimplify it. And they're like, oh, it's just a skin color. It's like, no, just some people, whether black, white, gay, straight, whatever, some people have the it factor and some people don't. And the people who don't have the it factor spend an awful lot of time obsessing about the people that do have the it factor and tearing them down instead of working on themselves, I think, and their own stuff, right? I'm just saying. So just talking about how women didn't play it. Well, that's actually not true if you look at some of the early writers. And they're obsessed with the race issue when we're talking elves, dwarves, etc. We're not talking black people, Asian people. That's stupid. Alignment, stereotypes, cultural bias. Austin Walker, a black game designer who hosts the podcast Friends at the Table, described this to me as a terrible alignment of design goals, racial stereotypes, and cultural biases just being mashed together when you're playing a game that involves taking down the door and killing someone. You need to put someone behind the door who you're willing to kill. So that's got to be black people. That's what the orcs are. No, if you think that, you're mental. The hero's journey. It just goes on. I mean, it's just, oh God, here, Critical Role, Star Broadcasting, shows such as Critical Role, Dimension 20, and other series expanded the audience just in time for the pandemic when people had a new need for activities they could do with friends remotely. Boom. Riggs. Okay, so this is Ben Riggs. This is a guy who's, yeah, he's a whole nother issue. So he said, D&D has become bigger than ever. Wizards told me that 85 million people have played D&D over the past year, and 21 million have registered on D&D Beyond, its online hub, and a lot of them are leaving now. Many new fans are being introduced to the game, not by playing it, by watching other people play it first. Actually, I would say some people are considering themselves D&D fans who don't actually play the game. They're fascinated with the idea of it. They have the hots for Matt Mercer. I'm not even kidding. I think that's a big part of it. But they're not actually playing the game. They're not actually buying the books. We had one person on Twitter, I remember not too long ago, complaining that there was a huge barrier to entry for Dungeons & Dragons because you had to buy dice. Do you know how cheap dice are? You can buy dice at Five Below. You can buy them at Dollar General now. That was unthinkable when I was a kid. When I was a kid, we had to buy hardcover books and we had to buy campaign sets, and they were expensive for the time. And I was the dungeon master, so guess who got stuck by most of the stuff? I also bought a copious amount of miniatures, and I painted them. And they were not cheap. The Raw Partha miniatures, the ones made of like pure lead. Yeah, they weren't cheap. And I bought a lot of them. I'm just saying it was not a cheap hobby. It never was a cheap hobby, but we had people complaining about the price of dice, for fuck's sake. Come on. Are these really the people we want in the hobby? It's like, I would be a video game player, but consoles just cost too much money. They should be free. It's like, fuck. Where do these people come from? So they're just going on and on and on. Oh my God. They're talking about here we go. Wizards saw its audience was changing and began to think about how it could make the game more inclusive. This was a major attitudinal shift back in 75 when pride about gender stereotypes in D&D. Gygax had written that he considered adding women to sections of the rulebook, including raping and pillaging, whores and tavern wenches, because that never happened in the Middle Ages. Hags and crones. Oh, God, I'd play that game. As well as adding an appendix on medieval harems, slave girls, and going Viking. The stereotype of the reactionary geek whose hatred for women manifests in imagining them as the victims of sexual violence is, let's say, historically rooted. Then in 2020, George Floyd. Oh, my God. It's like this person had a bullet every fucking grievance ever with Tolkien and D&D. We're going to give them a megaphone, and they're going to use that megaphone because this thing is like 10,000 words of D&D is racist. Did I mention it's racist? Is racist is racist. This should be the game I want it to be. Then you make it the game you want it to be, but the official game does not have to be that. Why are you playing this game? If you think it's so problematic and you think the rules are so antiquated, why the hell are you playing this game? Go make another game. Don't expect the game to change. Don't expect the fans to change just because you're offended by things in the game, or play it the way you want to play it at your table. But what they've been pushing for years is they want to change it into something it's not. Well, it is now. I can't say that. And they have. And they've chased off the grognards. Congratulations. Most of them have left a long time ago. And now because of your corporate greed, Hasbro, you've also chased off a lot of your older or newer fans too, as well as the older fans with the OGL debacle. A lot of people have left. But yeah, this is ridiculous. We don't need people like, God. Oh my God. Ghostbusters 2016. Are you freaking kidding me? The Echo. Oh my God. Gamergate, Comicsgate, Ghostbusters 2016, The Acolyte, The Rings of Power, all the damn check marks. DI. Musk is welcome to waste his money on trying to make everyone play the version of D&D that he thinks should exist in the world. That's never been how it works. Everyone will play it how they want, or they'll play something else. You could have just written that in the first paragraph, and that would have been like, hey, I think old D&D first edition is problematic, so I'm going to play it the way I want to play it. That's like 2 paragraphs, though. You don't get, if you're getting paid by the word, you gotta really stretch this thing out. So there we go, guys. Dungeons and Dragons is still racist in 2025. Holy hell. I need an ale. We'll see ya.